Hello everybody, welcome to a new video. Today I'm trying something new. It's water-soluble oil sticks from PHOENIX. This video is sponsored by them, but all the opinions are my own. They didn't ask me to say anything specific about these products. I was interested in trying them because watercolor and oil paints are my two favorite mediums, and I thought it would be cool to combine them. They also sent me some canvases suitable for watercolor and other water mediums. I have heard about watercolor ground on canvas, but I've never tried them, so I'm very excited to see how this turned out. My first impression is that these are really good quality art supplies, including the palette knives that they sent me. The metal parts, the flexibility, they all feel like very sturdy. The canvases are also very neat and tight. I've never tried this kind of stretched canvases. I usually prefer panels. So at first I was a bit afraid I could puncture them with a palette knife, but thankfully that did not happen. In my head they're kind of delicate like papers, but no, they're very strong. I have tried water-soluble oil paints before, and these oil sticks feels very similar to that, but they're in a stick form. So it is a bit stiffer compared to paint squeezed out from a tube. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. The texture is more similar to chocolate truffles. It melts in water very nicely, but in a different way than watercolor. I can't exactly tell in what way though. I felt a bit confused at first because I was trying two new things at the same time, so I didn't know what was causing what. But one thing I like to do with new art supply is to kind of push it to the limit. I want to know if these paints have a breaking point. If I use too little or too much water, maybe it's gonna separate, but I'm glad that didn't happen. As for the paint itself, I think they're great. They're very easy to work with. The yellow one is a little bit weaker than the other colors. I was able to do very light washes, but if I rub the canvas too hard, it will begin to peel. This only seemed to happen in the area where I have very thin washes, so that's something I have to avoid in my painting. But I find that dipping the palette knife into water before spreading the paint, that helps a lot. I was able to get a much thicker coverage. Maybe it's somewhat similar to using solvent, but since I never used solvent in my oil paintings, I don't think I should comment on that. Alright, let's start our painting. Since I'm very new to these materials, I needed a concrete plan for how I'm gonna approach this painting. My inspiration is this picture I took in France, but as you can see, it's not a super flattering image of the place. It was a rainy day and everything looked very dark. If I copied exactly what I see in this photo, the painting is going to suffer as well. I also need to simplify these buildings, so it's comfortable to paint on a 8x10 canvas. The focal point I chose is the pointy rooftop, breaking the distant horizon. So the day before I filmed this painting process, I did a value plan on my iPad to work out how I want this painting to look like. And then I did a color plan in my sketchbook with watercolor to kind of establish what mood I want this painting to have. So nothing here is decided on a whim. I planned as much as my ability allows, so that I can focus more on feeling these materials and play with textures. I started the sketch with my carpenter pencil with red lead. It's good to use a drawing tool that is not water soluble, because later when the canvas gets wet, I still want my sketch to be visible. Then I used a wet brush and the color yellow for underpainting. The paint went on the canvas very smoothly, there isn't any streakiness. This is where it hits me, like these oil sticks remind me of traditional gouache. They're both water soluble but also capable of opaque and thick applications. The difference is that oil sticks have no value shift, and also they don't have that matte finish. And this thought reminded me to start with thinner consistency and slowly build up the thickness. So the first layer, the sky and distant mountains, I used quite a bit of water. I was risking a bit because I have had some strange experience with water mixable oil paint. Now I don't remember exactly what happened, but I did some research. On Jackson's website, it says that the additives to make oil paint water soluble, it can rise to the surface when mixed with a certain amount of water, and when that water evaporates, the paint becomes stiff. I remember that was very unpleasant, so I'm very glad it never happened to this painting. All the mixes felt very consistent and reliable. They didn't behave weirdly in any way. Using a wet palette knife works really well, both on the palette and on the canvas. Since the paint was re-wettable, I mean the paint on the canvas can be reactivated with water, so I was able to go back with a wet brush to do some adjustments, like pushing the paint around. The color choices of these sticks, it's the most classic primary colors. Lemon yellow, alizarin crimson, ultramarine, plus viridian and Mars black. If I could choose, I might want to get a burnt sienna instead of the Mars black, or maybe another warm red or orange. I feel like I had to mix an orange color quite often. I like to mix the orange into viridian to make it more appropriate for foliage. I also plan to make some of the rooftop in different shades of orange. But at the same time, I understand why they have Mars black. It's very important for mixing the darkest dark. I didn't plan to use it at first, but later I needed black to mix like an indigo color for the other rooftops. At this stage, I feel like I got quite well acquainted with these materials. All in all, I had a very positive experience. I was able to use some watercolor glazing techniques to let the white of the canvas show through in the parts where the value is lighter. I also really enjoyed using the wet palette knife to mix directly on canvas. It was very tactile and abstract. At first, I thought it wouldn't work on a stretch canvas, but it turned out great. So this is how the painting turned out. I was quite happy with it. I feel like it has a bit of that children's illustration kind of vibe. This is also the first painting where I departed from the original reference photo and changed the entire color scheme, so that was fun as well. I hope you find this video interesting or at least informative. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!